Hello there and welcome back to another review. Today we're going to be having a look at Odd Couple, not the Odd Couple with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. Today we're going to be having a look at Odd Couple with Sammo Hung and Leung Wang. Absolutely amazing film, an absolutely great kung fu movie to watch, made in 1979. And what sets this film really above, sort of heads and tails above, like quite a lot of the contemporaries at the time, is this film is largely weapons based. That is the novelty with the film, and many consider this movie to be one of, if not the best weapons based kung fu movies that was ever made. A lot of stars in this film, I'd say, obviously with Leung Wang and Sammo. You've got Dean Shek, Mars, Leung Yan, Bryan Leung making an appearance. This was made when Sammo Hung and Leung Wang and Carl Macker were sort of joining forces. These three were very much friends within the industry, and they decided to make a company together called Garbo. And the idea was they were trying to, like, the idea of working together on like individual projects as a team, with sort of all taking turns sort of in the director's chair, producing, starring, that kind of thing. If you look at, say, Knockabout, you've got Leung Wang and Carl Macker in that. Skinny Tiger, Fatty Dragon they did, and the late 80s, early 90s as well. So these three were very much, like I say, good friends, and they just enjoyed working together, and they set up this company. An Odd Couple was one of the ventures that they did, Carl Macker producing this one and also having sort of a brief sort of cameo role at the start of the movie. As mentioned, the film is mainly weapons based, and it's, as I say, regarded to be one of the best ones that was, ever made. And the real novelty as well with this film is that Sammo and Leung Wang both have dual roles, and that's another thing that a lot of people remember from this movie, that really stands out. As I say, they both play a master role and they both play a student role. Lau plays Sammo's student and Sammo plays Lau's student. It's just a real fun film. It really is. I would say with really tight, fast choreography going on, and some fantastic stuff. And when Sammo is playing these kind of characters, these eccentric, larger than life type of characters, you can tell. I mean, he's just having such a blast, and there's just so much fun to be had with this movie. It's worth noting as well that, like, solely like weapons based kung fu movies they weren't in vogue at all. It wasn't necessarily the thing to do. Largely the combat was sort of hand to hand, as we know, and there was obviously weapons in other films. There was like the odd bow staff here and there and the odd whatever it may be, but this film was sort of the original in that sort of, let's make a whole film weapons based. Let's make the bulk of the film solely about the weapons, and the weapons of choice here, they choose the spear and the sword to demonstrate that. And what this does, it allows both performers in Leung Wang and Sammo Hung to really show off their skills with both weapons. And not only that, with the idea of like both playing a master, both playing a student, it really allows them both to show off their acting chops as well, that they can play that mature, wiser Sifu, but at the same time they can play that naive, like a kung fu hungry student. They can do both roles, that naivety and that eagerness as well, depicting that against the older, more knowledgeable, more mature type of character. So a really fun film, really classic Sammo Hung movie, although it's not technically a Sammo Hung movie. I know Leung Wang directed, but please check it out if you've never seen it, because a lot of people, when they think of traditional, like old school Sammos, they go to, like I say, the Warrior 2s or the Magnificent Butchers, but this is definitely another one that really you should definitely check out, because it's absolutely a brilliant kung fu comedy film with some really tight choreography. So the film opens with us being told about the 18 traditional weapons, kung fu weapons. There are 9 long weapons and 9 short weapons. Sword is the king of the short, and spear is the king of the long. And it's worth noting as well, you'll notice that if you know your kung fu movies and you know your kung fu stars, but if you watch that opening, like the opening credits, it's worth mentioning as well that Lam Ching-ying and Yuen Bu done the action choreography in this movie. They were sort of, action. They were the ones choreographing the fights behind the scenes. So if you know your kung fu movies and you see them 2 names pop up, you're going to be in good hands. You know the film is going to be great even before it's even begun. This was a film I've seen so many times. I'd say it's a huge favourite of mine. I can't say enough positive things about this movie. Much like Knockabout as well. Just great fun stuff going on. So old Master Sammo, so for the purpose of this review, I will be saying sort of Master Sammo, Student Sammo, Master Lau, Student Lau, just to keep it easier so we can sort of keep track and sort of know where we are and like who I'm discussing and regarding the plot and what's going on. So Master Sammo is sort of the king of the sabres, and he gives this sword maker sign a name saying as such, like King of Sabres. So then Peter Chan turns up, is sort of in the market, wanting to challenge the King of Sabres, and Carl Macker, as I mentioned here, produced and makes a brief cameo appearance. It's worth noting as well where Carl Macker is sort of synonymous with his bald head and a really funny guy. Here he's they've actually given him sort of hair and just made him sort of a kung fu master as such. Usually, although he doesn't really always like say no kung fu in the films he's in, but here they make him sort of a kung fu master kind of guy. So it's interesting now as well with that opening scene that it isn't actually Sammo and Lau who share the opening fight. It's between Carl Macker and Peter Chan, which is very interesting. So Sammo pits them against each other, and we learn that as the plot progresses, we learn that Lau and Sammo, the master versions of them, have like a duel every year, and it always ends in a draw. They fight every year at the same time, same place, but they're trying to get like a final winner. Who's better? Who is the better out of us? And they can never get an answer. It always ends in a draw. And if you watch that first encounter between the two, not to mention how tight the choreography is, how fast it is, the speed, the intricacy of it all. But there's one bit in particular that if you do watch this film, if you've never seen it, or even if you have seen it, maybe you know the bit I'm talking about. But Lau sort of chucks his spear in the air, he sort of throws it a little bit, and he sort of catches it with his leg, and then he sort of does something, and the spear, and he sort of unleashes it from his leg and sort of manages to catch it, throws it from his leg and sort of catches it again. Sammo's sort of spinning the sword in the air as well. I mean, really incredible stuff. I mean, not just the accuracy and just the intricacy of all this fights together, just the way it works, and just how, like I say, how tight the choreography is. Just nothing but just faultless, just absolutely amazing stuff. And like I've always said before, with like weapon scenes in the kung fu movies, regardless of whether they're props or real weapons or what they're made of or anything, they still had to be accurate. They still had to, you get that in your face or near your eye or something like that, it's going to hurt, it's going to leave a mark. So such is the skill of both of these performers. They just make it look so easy, absolutely so easy. I mean, just, I could watch Sammo and Leung Kao-wang sort of doing scenes like this all day long. It's really fast, incredible stuff. So just amazing. I mean, it just really does just sets up the tone for what is to follow in the film. So Lau cuts off Sammo's long beard, and Sammo cuts off Lau's eyebrows, which will be honest, were humongously long. He has like these eyebrows that go like below his chin. So after another draw, they both agreed to like both train a student. Like, I'll train a guy, you train a guy. Let's stop fighting. Let's let them duke it out. We still got to get an answer. We're not getting anywhere like this. I'll train somebody, you train somebody. So that's sort of the bulk of the film. Lee Hoi Sang then turns up sporting a very thick moustache and eyebrows. I must say, sort of like a protection racket thug. Lee Hoi Sang probably most remembered for being the main villain in Magnificent Butcher. If not the main villain, Lee Hoi Sang's usually sort of an antagonist in some ways. Usually somebody who is like ridiculing others, or like he's a evil master of a right. He's always sort of that kind of guy. You may remember him as well from like Young Master, Project A. He's in so many films. Lee Hoi Sang, so many. So Sammo watches like a young Lau stand up to Lee Hoi Sang, and he's thugs in the market. And I love when Sammo putting the melon on Lee Hoi Sang's head and putting all the knives in it as well. As I say, he always ends up getting his comeuppance, Lee Hoi Sang, in some way or another. As Sammo wants Lau to be a student so bad that Sammo and his student actually they set fire to Lau's house. Not that they only set fire to like sort of young Lau's house, but they set fire to his house right in front of him as well while they're laughing, because obviously they want to take him as a student. He can't have nothing. He's got to be sort of that's part of the clause for being his student. It's like, right, I'll burn down your house, so you've got nowhere to go. You're gonna have to accept me as your master. And it's just a funny scene, the fact that Sammo's willing to go out that way, and he's just laughing, setting fire to it while he's trying to put it out. Just funny stuff. It just always makes you laugh. So they have a fight at a shrine where Sammo does some nice moves here and basically says, look, let me teach you so you can kill me. Look, I'll teach you kung fu. I'll teach you what I've got to teach you. then you'll be good enough to sort of kill me and get payback, and like everybody wins. So that's sort of the motive he has for sort of going with Sammo. Not your usual type of thing going on there, but yeah, so that's what's sort of draws Leung's in to sort of, right, okay, so if you teach me something good enough, I'll be able to just like kick your ass for burning down my house. I say just how much he sees Leung's potential. So we meet a young Sammo as well at this point, who's sort of a boatman. He is sort of one Leung wants as his student, and he's very impressed with his skill with the oar and the paddle and things like that. And the difference here is that Master Leung thinks he is like too cocky. Young Sammo's too cocky, so he doesn't want to seem too overly eager to take him as his student. It's very interesting, the dynamic between the two. Like Sammo actually respects Master Leung, like young Sammo. Young Leung hates Master Sammo completely. He just wants to, like I say, and that's something that carries on throughout as the film goes on. There's this resentment he has against Sammo, Master Sammo. So that carries on. So they both take each other as their students. So student Leung has to basically learn how to hold a bird properly, not too soft and not too hard. And student Sammo is like still obsessed with rowing at this point. Both pupils gradually get better. And I love how student Leung keeps attacking Sammo, as he still wants to kill him for burning down his house. Like, he's still trying to get him back. Even when he's just learnt a little bit, he still keeps on going to attack him because he just thinks like he just can't stand the guy after what he did to him. So eventually Sammo says, right, I've got to leave because you're getting good enough to basically take me out, so I'm going to leave now. Dean Sheck turns up as well as this point as like this annoying, like the kind of sleazy guy that's always trying to chat up women and like go after women in the market. They even go so far as to give him his very own personalised disco beat in this movie whenever he's approaching a lady. This girl that he's after sort of hides behind Sammo, who like makes Dean Sheck eat loads of eggs at one point, which is it's a disgusting scene, but it's a funny scene because he makes him eat all these eggs, and Dean Sheck keeps on burping out he must burp out about 8 egg yolks, and that topped up with the fact they combine it with Sammo just whacking him on the head, this clonk noise. And he just keeps on burping out all these eggs. As I say, it's pretty gross, but it is quite funny, just them two things combined. And it just always makes me laugh with the sound effect they use. So the whole film is done pretty much tongue-in-cheek with these kind of comedy scenes. And with the waiter even asking him at one point, what would you like to eat? And he's like, anything but eggs, just little things like that. Or when Mars is following young Leung, and he's just, no matter where he is, Mars just pretends he's like peeing. Mars is like, no matter where he's going, Mars pretends he's peeing. There's a lot of funny moments in this film, or like when Dean Sheck is trying to get vengeance for sort of what Sammo did to him. He hires these two people to sort of get paid back, but it turns out they're from the Chinese opera, and the whole fight is done like a Chinese opera sequence because that's the only way they know how to fight. Again, just really made me laugh, and still does every time I see that. Just shot like a Chinese opera. So we get to our main villain, eventually played by Leung, Bryan Leung, otherwise known as Beardy, who kidnaps the two students to sort of lure the masters out. They both got scarred by him in the past on separate occasions. He has like 4 assassins, and if I recall, I think one of them is Chong Fat and one of them is Lam Ching Ying, if I recall. I'm pretty sure that's right. So yeah, Leung Ka-Yan's sort of thrown in right at the end, sort of just chucked in at the end. It's not an afterthought, but it's like, we're having so much fun with these master student, me playing this role, you playing that role. It's like, right, we better get a villain in as well. And they do, great choice with Leung Ka-Yan here. So they go to get their students back, and I love how as the film reaches this moment, you get a true sign of the respect they have for each other. I mean, it's still funny though, when Leung can't beat Leung Ka-Yan's character, and someone says you should be using that spear to stir shit instead. There's that little, even though as the film goes on near that end, you do get the feeling they did respect each other. There wasn't always this severe sense of competition between the two. They both had so much pride, and suddenly it goes from being funny to quite not sad, but you start to worry about these people as you could like I say, Master Sammo, Master Leung, because they're such fun characters. You don't want them to die. Do you know what I mean? It's because at this point, it's been done pretty much comedy, laugh, and then it gets to the end, and it's like, okay, they're actually they're getting actually their asses handed to them here. Something could actually happen here, and you don't want them to die. You really don't. I know when I first watched it, I was like, oh no, I don't, because you don't want, because you're having such a blast with these characters. You don't want anything to happen to them. And I love how young Sammo is like I said, respect for his master. And when old Sammo is near death, he keeps on coughing on purpose to get Leung's attention, because young Leung just hates his guts. And old Sammo, like Master Sammo's laying there just sort of coughing deliberately louder and louder to sort of get his attention. Of course, young Leung does sort of succumb and just, he's there to comfort his master. So the masters, they do eventually die, even going so far as to compete in who dies first. Such is the extent of their competition and rivalry, just competing to see who actually, goes into the afterlife first. So young Leung and young Sammo go straight to Beardy, go straight to Leung. I mean, no messing around here. There's no training sequence, which they could have done if they wanted to make the film even longer. Some people would have done that to stretch the film out. Like you could have had a scene, easily a 10-15 minute sequence of young Sammo, young Leung training together with the spear and the sword to try and how they both want to get payback for their masters' deaths, how they're going to team up. But you don't get any of that. You basically, their masters die and then they just go and get vengeance. There's no sort of warm up or anything like that of them two working together, like how we're going to do this, or working, like I say, training sequences with the sword and the spear. So it's mainly because I'd imagine Leung Ka-Wang may have thought at this point we've maybe had enough training sequences throughout the movie, because the film has been by and large for at least a third of it about training. So I think maybe it might have been right, let's just go straight to the end fight. Let's give the audience, some good, a fight sequence here. No messing around, could have. It could have been fun to watch them training together, but I can sort of understand why it necessarily wasn't in the movie. And they end up using magnets on him to sort of gain an advantage. I will say some of the fights and some of the fight scenes in the footage, not every time, and definitely not throughout the whole film. There are certain little bits of fight scenes that you can tell is a little bit sped up. The camera speed is a little bit sped up, just a little bit. Again, very few instances this happens, but there's a few little moments where you can tell the camera speed is just a little tiny bit sped up. And just tiny bits, as I say, in certain scenes. They left their Sifu's body there when fighting Leung Ka-Yan. They leave him there, they defeat him, like I say, with the aid of magnets and things like that at the end fight, which the end fight is good, but I think it's sort of, it's good fun, but I think at this point it was sort of right, let's mix it up a bit, let's not just do spear and sword versus him, let's just mix it up. So they bring in the novelty of sort of using magnets and things like that. They basically, when their Sifus die, their bodies are like when they're fighting Leung Ka-Yan, they leave them there, but they somehow manage to get hold of them and get them back at some points. I guess they just go and fetch them and they end up burying them. So at the very end, they both decide to fight in honor of their masters, which of course they are evenly matched still. They're both, because he knows what he knows, he knows what he knows. They both evenly matched. They both know what each other's master, what their master showed them, and they say decide right, the first one to put their weapon in the Sifu's grave wins, which ends up they do at the same time as well, and that is sort of the end of the movie. So you never get an end sort of who is the winner. It's not sort of decided like who is the ultimate. Is it the spear? Is it the saber? It's never really decided. But again, it's a really, really fun movie. The end fight, as I say, the ending is a bit sort of, once the masters die, once Master Sammo and Master Leung dies, it does sort of not run out of steam, but it's like you've had such a blast to this point. It's like, what can they do to sort of top this? But it's a really, really great kung fu movie, and it's definitely, when the people say it's like the best weapons movie, kung fu movie, traditional one ever made, I can sort of agree with that statement. It's definitely up there. It's definitely one that everybody should see, especially if you want more Sammo Hung to check out. But absolutely love The Odd Couple. Absolutely, really fantastic film. So thank you so much for watching the review. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again soon.